This is Energy of Business Moments with Michael Sipe, the show that takes you around the world to share interviews with some of the most successful and relevant people on the planet. Hear their stories and get the most important business lessons they have learned on their road to success, and get exclusive advice on how to implement their business success into your life and business. Energy of Business Moments is brought to you by the Strategic Advisor Board and your host, Michael Sipe.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Strategic Advisor Board Energy of Business Moments podcast. I am your host, Michael Sipe, and on today's episode of Energy and Moments in Business, we're going to talk to Kenny Dettman. He is CEO and Managing Director of Easy ERC. Now, as a business owner, obviously a lot of us have many challenges, and one of the great things at Strategic Advisor Board on the consulting side is we like to find those hidden gems, those unique aspects that give businesses a leg up. And so learning a little bit more about the ERC will be very beneficial for a lot of you. All right, so Kenny, welcome to the show and tell us a little bit about your business.
Thanks for having me, Michael. So Easy ERC is a tax advisory firm. It's comprised of over 40 professionals today. We are exclusively advising businesses on the employee retention credit. Business started in the middle of 2021. I was previously a tax partner with a large consulting firm, Alvarez and Marsal. Most of my book of business was advising private equity owned portfolio companies on all things tax. And when COVID hit, when the CARES Act was released in March of 2020, government stimulus was front and center. We all know about the PPP. By now, we mostly all know about the ERC. But there was a long period of time, into 2020, as we pivoted into 2021, when business owners had very little knowledge about the employee retention credit. The sort of the redheaded stepchild of the CARES Act. You had the PPP, you had the EIDL. We all know about the individual stimulus that was provided. Not many business owners paid attention to the employee retention credits, and there were good reasons for that at the time. But many of my clients, private equity portfolio companies, weren't eligible for the PPP. So I've since sort of ground zero with the CARES Act, been helping companies claim these credits. Towards the middle of 2021, I saw an opportunity to break off from my income tax advisory practice, from the bureaucracy of a large firm, to start Easy ERC, exclusively focused on this. It is a complex area of tax law and accounting. And I thought in order to be a really great advisory and to build a really great advisory firm surrounded or focused exclusively on the employee retention credit, it was my strong belief that you really need to do it full time. And so since March of 2021 through today, we've grown from a small team of 3 to over 40. We're across the United States and have professionals in Puerto Rico as well. And we have also reached a milestone as of last month. We've just crossed over $500 million in credit claims for our clients. So that was a very proud moment for me, for the firm, a great achievement. We're excited for the future. We've also acknowledged that the future with respect to the employee retention credit is limited. We are decidedly a business that if we don't do something else in a couple of years, decidedly dies. So it's a really interesting kind of challenge in front of us to make sure that we're taking full advantage of the opportunities in front of us and helping as many businesses as we possibly can, with the backdrop of the opportunities are going to dry up. And, if we just stay static as a business, we're going to be in trouble in a couple of years if we don't complement our current service offering with something else.
Yeah, great background. Thanks for that, Kenny. And the first thing that comes to mind right off the bat at that last point you made was I came from the tech space and we had a saying, innovate or die. And so when there are these things that are time limited, obviously as a business owner, you're going to have to shift. But I'd like to congratulate you on two things. One is obviously leaving an established firm and going out on your own. Any entrepreneur obviously has that challenge of okay, how am I going to do this? How am I going to make it work? And then, oh, by the way, now you've obviously been successful growing up to 40 employees, over 500 million in credits. What a great story. And that's
Thank
just
you.
in the short year. So well deserved.
Very much appreciated. It's been a wild ride, and I was with Alvarez and Marcel for nearly 15 years. I was an intern with them during college. It's the only type of environment I know. So moving from a firm of over 5,000 to starting something from scratch has been a wild ride. It's been overwhelming. Lots of highs and lows. I was fortunate. My office with Alvarez was in Miami. I've established the headquarter office for Easy ERC in Fort Lauderdale, 2 minutes away from my house. So there are some really nice perks, though, of course, to sort of starting a business from scratch and designing it the way that you want to bring sort of the good parts from the experiences you've had in the past, but also take the opportunity to design things the way you would have designed them if you had the opportunity from those prior experiences to correct or fill the gaps or do things a little bit differently.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, to your credit, yeah, you got some perks, but you still have your hair too. You haven't pulled it all out. So you got that
Most
going for yeah. All right. Well, I love what you just shared there, because really when we think about some of our organizations that we're a part of, especially corporate, right, is the idea of, hey, sometimes corporate has some really great aspects to it, and then it has some negative aspects. And so as being an entrepreneur yourself, being able to identify what you want to bring over becomes really important, and it helps establish culture. But part of culture, as we know, is what kind of culture is it? And so some things can be very positive, and we can have some really great moments from that. So energetically, when we think about our thoughts, emotions, and actions, those three components there are part of our core energy individually, but it can also be part of our company's culture as well. So for you, Kenny, what would you say was maybe an energetic high moment for you in getting this new business going?
So there was a period of time early on in the business where it was challenging. The fee structure associated with providing employee retention credit services is such that we as a business don't get compensated until our clients are compensated. And there was a period early on of uncertainty as to how long exactly it was going to take the IRS to process the amended payroll tax returns that are predominantly used to claim this credit. And when we started the business, because it was midstream 2021, most of the folks that were doing ERC work were pivoting from filing for the credit on timely filed payroll tax returns to these amended returns, which can only be filed on paper. We had no idea whether it was going to take 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, longer for our clients to get paid. And so, naturally that created a bit of a working cap issue early on in the business. So we were just kind of flying by the skin of our teeth early on. And as mentioned, we formed the business in May of 2021. We started to see some of our initial filings made in the July, August timeframe. We didn't see a credit process until December of 2021. So there were several months, which, thinking back, 3 months, no big deal. It felt like an eternity. And so really one of the first major high points for us is when we started to see some consistency and some predictability, which was important for us, but also important for our clients who are, in many cases, desperately needing this stimulus. So I'd say that the first real high point, and really when we established that this was a viable, longish term business for us, is when we started to see credits regularly processed in kind of a 3 to 4 month time frame. Now, I'll also say that applies to smaller credits that we help our clients with. There's a bucket of larger credits, greater than $200,000 per quarter. We're still in that waiting phase. on when is the IRS going to start processing these larger credits that they designated as higher risk based on their value. We're as far out as almost 16, 17 months on some of those credits. But I'm happy to share that within the last 2 weeks or so, we're starting to see some movement there. So it's a great indication that we're hearing kind of rumors that the IRS is or has recently trained some agents to start giving a bit of a second layer review on these larger credits. We're starting to see them move, and it's another really high point for us to say, this hard work that we put in, probably more importantly, this cash that these businesses that we're helping really need. We're starting to see these very large credits turn, and it's a very encouraging, another encouraging moment, and was an encouraging moment back in December of 2021 that, hey, this business has got legs. We're going to solve our working cap issues. Let's grow this thing. Let's scale this thing. And it's been an enjoyable ride ever since.
Yeah, those are two great instances there. And what I am keying in on a little bit too is obviously, as a business owner, we have different revenue streams, or hopefully we have different revenue streams. And so, waiting for that very first one to come in, not knowing how long it would take, 3 months. So tell me a little bit more, like in that moment of like before the first one came, so many things going through your mind, but emotionally, like where were you at that point when you hadn't gotten anything come in yet?
Yeah, it was an extremely stressful time. You're constantly thinking about, at that time, a much smaller team, but constantly thinking about, how am I going to pull in the necessary capital that I need to continue to make payroll? Should I already start thinking about some alternative sources of revenue? Should I be rethinking the way our current pricing model works to ask for more cash upfront or as a deposit? And that's amid a period of time when if you're building a business from complete ground up from scratch, there are so many changes that are happening on a daily basis to just try to master your core product or your core service offering, that having to think about, well, do I need to tuck something else in, simultaneous to trying to get what I was setting out to do the right way? Is that going to just kind of jeopardize the quality of the work product that I'm trying to do by being distracted and building out some type of parallel service offering, revenue stream, changes in pricing model. So it was quite stressful. I was fortunate enough that, because I started this business with a number of family and friends, it was possible to delay some payroll. I really only had to dip into personal funds on one instance, which I'm very lucky to say as a startup business owner that, in terms of seeking outside capital, the only place I ever needed to go was my personal bank account. But we got over that hump, and I feel very, very fortunate, very blessed that I've never had to let anybody go from this business. No one has ever moved on. In fact, we have 100% voluntary retention rate, and we haven't been put in a position where we need to cut at any people or resources. And I'm also pleased to say that I've gotten to a place where I'm very comfortable with the product, the service that we're offering right now, that we are starting to bring in those other service lines, starting to lay the groundwork for what that pivot will be post ERC.
Yeah, great. Thanks for that background. And I do like the idea of like, hey, you're creating an environment where people are sticking around. And so when we talked about those high moments energetically, we talked about how, hey, you were coming from a space where you weren't sure where things were, how ends were going to get met. And you'd had to dip into the personal savings a little bit, but eventually, it came in. And so it makes sense that would actually end up being almost a low moment turning into a high moment, right? Where we
Absolutely.
weren't sure you keep the doors open, and then once that happened, then you're able to pivot and start moving forward. And now you're thinking about, okay, another revenue line or something like that. But I'm really curious more about what you were saying about your retention, like 100% retention. That's pretty impressive, especially in your field. I mean, there are a lot of maybe other opportunities out there, or more importantly, some people it may not be their thing. So what would you say is the biggest factor, or a couple biggest factors, into people sticking around with your business?
Well, some people tell me I'm paying everyone too much. I challenge that notion a bit. I think that the most important factor, and I know it's true for me from the environment I left, is culture. And I have a team of individuals that love working with one another. Respect one another. We've created a great environment of mutual respect. Fun is, at the center of our core values. Innovation is at the center of our core values. It's not specifically part of our core value, but burnout is, when you look at the middle market to big four accounting firms that are out there, they all talk about burnout, but it's just a very difficult problem to solve when you are constantly trying to catch up with yourself. And so, sort of, how do we create that extra 10 to 20% of bandwidth, in our current pool of employees, to develop them, to train them, to get them thinking about ways to be more efficient, more productive with less units of input or service. And so that constant problem that exists in established firms of, we just never feel like we have sufficient resources to do what's in front of us. We're constantly still chasing additional dollars of revenue. We're talking about growth and innovation and training, but we just struggle to try to find that pocket of time to create that is not completely client service focused. I've had the fortune of being able, with this business, to start it by saying that we are not going to burn people out. We are going to hire ahead of revenue. We are going to figure out a way to scale, by creating really good processes, defining roles very, very, very well. And one of probably the most significant factors is that we're not trying to be everything to everyone. When you come from the consulting world or the tax world, you're often trying to venture into areas that are new to you, to be a full service advisor to your clients. But, there is something to be said to some of the firms out there that like the approach of pigeonholing people into one specialty and having them just do that very, very well. Those people tend to eventually not be happy with having to do such routine or mundane functions. It's not overly stimulating. And I think we probably would have that problem with ERC if this were the plan to do this for 10 years. We'd have that problem. But we haven't run into it yet. We're constantly finding ways to be innovative within ERC, and I think that has created an environment where people are happy. People are happy to work. So it's culture. It's not burning people out. It's valuing people with compensation, and making sure that at the forefront of everything, you really have to enjoy what you're doing and who you're doing it with, which is a line I borrow from my prior firm. But if you're not having fun, you're not showing up to work happy, at some point you will.
Right. Great words of wisdom there, Kenny. And I appreciate a little bit where you tied it all together, because you're talking about, hey, salary, yeah, it's a huge chunk of it for some people. But ultimately, it's about creating the connections within the organization so that people enjoy working with each other and find the fun out of it, and then give them the opportunity to innovate, because that's required to not keep things stagnant. And for those that are familiar with the energy leadership index levels, there's what I call the sweet spot of energy level 5, and that's what I call the collaboration level. That's where there's cooperation and acceptance. And so your teams, when they value each other, and since that's one of your values, that's great, because then what that does is it fosters that teamwork. It fosters that cooperation because they accept and value each other. And then they're willing to help each other out when somebody needs, short on time, or they're willing to jump in on another team's work. That kind of collaborative spirit is interestingly contagious. And so for you to set that as a goal when you started out the company speaks volumes for your success. So great, really glad you shared that, because it talked about the impact of doing so.
Thank you. Yeah, something interesting in terms of attracting talent. Everyone who we interview, it's as it usually is. It's a two-way interview. They're interviewing, our firm just as much as we're interviewing them. But we are always going to be asked the same question, which is, we're going to leave our established, employer now doing, whatever we were doing. We're potentially going to be doing that for another 5, 10, 20, 30 years. And you're asking us to join your company, which, we know what you do. It's all you do. Doesn't that phase out? What are you going to do next? And, I always turn that a little bit to say, well, it's not what I'm going to do next or what my partners and I decide to do next. It's what we as a firm are collaboratively going to decide makes sense. And that might be, one pivot. That might be, 3, 4, 5, however many different directions. And I think that really excites people. It weeds out the people that's not right for. This is not an environment that's right for everyone, but it helps us attract people who are also the right fit, who are thinking collaboratively, who are thinking with innovation at sort of the forefront of what they want out of their employment.
Yeah, that's great. It's a good way to turn it back on them and get their buy-in to make them feel empowered. Yep. Part of that process. And what's also interesting too to me is the aspect of being able to bring them on for a sort of a purpose or cause, and being able to then pivot, and in doing the training and creating that environment where they know that that's part of the culture, even though it takes time away from generating new revenue. It's almost as if one of your investments is actually not money, but time, and you're sacrificing that time to invest in your employees or invest in a new process or system within the organization that will then propel you forward. And even though it sort of robs right now, the longer term payout is going to be much, much greater. And the testament to that is obviously within 100% retention rate. Like, that's amazing. So clearly this is a super huge nugget for people, is to recognize that, hey, investing in your employees with training, with whatever it is that fosters the culture and your values, pays big dividends. So really glad you shared that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, so we talked a lot about some high moments and culture and things like that. Sometimes there are low moments, and we did cover that a little bit. Is there any other low moment for you that stands out?
So interconnected with this concept of, I mentioned 10 to 20% of kind of excess capacity to allocate towards things other than your core job functions. It's always been, from the beginning of this business, important to me for that pocket to exist. Because I'm of the belief, if you get to 100%, if you get to 40 hours of your work week are dedicated to doing, 100% of your core job tasks, that 40 or that 100% quickly becomes 110 to 150%. So if you don't protect that 10 to 20% of somebody's time, to be training, to be innovating, to be more collaborative in some area outside of the core job functions, I think you lose it and you get to, something that leads to burnout. So I would say that, where I felt a little low, in particular, towards the January, February time frame, when I started the Easy ERC, I was the only, partner. I was the sole owner of the firm. And I realized that I was going to burn myself out if I didn't look elsewhere for senior leadership, senior support. And, much like many startup business owners, I was working both ends of the candle. I, was often 8 a.m. to 3 a.m. in the morning. And so when I finally was able to find some people that I've known and trust for a long time to bring into this business to be support to me, which that sort of pushes its way down. There was absolutely a very low moment where I realized that, wait a sec, I didn't protect my own 10 to 20%. I'm constantly at 150%. I need help. And I got that help, and we're in a great place now. But that was certainly the outside of sort of financial concerns, the lowest of the low is when you're burning yourself out and you're not protecting your own time.
Oh, so wise to share that, because that is so true, right? With an entrepreneur, especially startup, you're so used to spend a lot of extra time in the business, but at some point, you're pushing, that pushing will fail. And you obviously, reach that point, but also rein yourself back in. So good on you for recognizing that and then taking some action. Yeah, well, Kenny, you've had a lot of great insight here. I'd be really curious to know, if you could meet anybody deceased or living, who would that be and why?
Well, my paternal grandfather, I've never met. He was deceased when I was born, but I've heard a lot of great stories, and he was an entrepreneur. He went from nothing to something. He was in the staffing industry. His first line of staffing was folks in Chicago. They needed workers to unload cargo off of trains in Chicago, and that was sort of what he first broke into. And that over the course of half a decade migrated into parts of what are now H&R Block, Spirion, if you've heard of them. There's a home healthcare agency, Interim of Healthcare, who is also an offshoot of City Car Unloaders. So it'd be interesting to certainly have conversations with my grandfather, not just about entrepreneurial stuff, but to be able to meet him and learn about those experiences on the business side, and then of course everything else I would possibly ever like to ask the grandfather I never met. I think that would. That's a clear and obvious answer for me.
Yeah, well, it's so great when you can tie somebody who was a leader, an influencer, and oh, by the way, they happen to be family. To get that combo together makes a lot of sense, and appreciate you sharing that. So, good.
It's in my DNA.
It sure is.
Took a while for me to figure it out, but it's in there.
Hey, some people are slow out of the gate, but they still win the race. So that's awesome. Good. Well, Kenny, how can people get a hold of you, either as a business or you personally?
So we obviously have our website, which has backing up the step, for those who aren't familiar with the employee retention credit, it is a refundable payroll tax credit. At this point, all of the claims you're making on the employee retention credit are retroactive. So this was a stimulus program passed alongside the PPP. Today, it can provide up to $26,000 of a cash infusion per employee for those employees that were in place in 2020 and 2021, when employers were feeling the financial effects and the operational impacts due to COVID-19 and also due to, of course, the governmental orders that often shut down or restricted businesses. So it is a refundable payroll tax credit, meaning it's cash from the U.S. Treasury. Our job here is to create awareness and to help businesses claim this credit the right way, to make sure that they are prepared in the event that the IRS ever were to make a challenge. Our goal is to create a work product for them that is directly responsive to anything and everything the IRS could possibly ask for in terms of trying to substantiate this claim. So if there are business owners out there that have heard about it or have heard about it and are just unsure about these eligibility tests, we love talking to business owners to tell them that, hey, there is an opportunity. We also like talking to business owners to say, hey, there's not really an opportunity there. You should be careful of the firms that are out there marketing. Last night I watched Thursday Night Football. There was an employer retention credit ad during Thursday Night Football. So it's important to be vigilant out there. And, part of our job is yes, to bring this opportunity to business owners, but part of our job is also to make sure that we are, properly informing business owners that aren't eligible for the credit, that they shouldn't take it. So the best place to contact us is through our website, www.easy-erc.com. There is a questionnaire that you can fill out on the website. Takes less than 5 minutes. And from there, oftentimes I'm directly calling people who make a submission on our website. I'm also, if you go to our About page on our website, you could reach out to me via email. My phone number's on there as well. We are always available. We love to talk to business owners. We love to help business owners claim this credit. We're duly deserving of it. It's just a really nice experience, for us, for our clients, to be able to bring them this opportunity. And it will still be around up until April 15th, 2025 is kind of the drop dead date on when you can last claim this credit.
Okay, yeah, thanks for the background information there and how people can get the credit and why it's still valuable today. And obviously, as you guys grow and expand, you're going to be offering even better products down the road. So good for you to be a resource for business owners. I'm glad you shared that. All right, well, Kenny, thanks for being on the show today. Appreciate it very much. And thanks for taking the time out to share with us your wisdom.
It's been my pleasure, Michael. I appreciate the opportunity. I think, it's very enlightening to hear some of your views on, the interplay with energy and, business decisions, business outcomes. I think that's a very, very prudent, very important, thing that, we're not always thinking about. So kudos to you for creating a very nice platform. I appreciate your time, and I hope to connect with you again soon.
Sounds good.
Thanks for listening to Energy of Business Moments with your host, Michael Sipe. Please leave your feedback and visit strategicadvisorboard.com to get the latest and greatest business advisement on the planet. Follow us on social media for updates, and we will see you on the next episode.